Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kodash. Welcome to another lesson. This is going to be some kind of short. You're looking at Deacon Shakyah. He used to be with us before we were known as Great Millstone, back in the school in Connecticut. As you brothers already know, he came on the live show while we was out teaching, the camp, and he was making statements about, Solomon is not Yahushai, and he said he would do a video. I guess this is the video he did. I haven't watched it yet. The Lord's will I get a chance to watch it. But this lesson, we're just going to touch on the new moon and the Sabbaths, because there's a big controversy on when the Sabbath is supposed to be kept. And, these guys that are out here teaching, pretty much they're following what the so-called Jews follow, and that's they're worshiping the Sabbath Friday night to Sunday night, which is Saturn, the worship of Saturn. And here it is, they'll get out there and they'll curse the white man out. Well, some of them anyway. They'll say that the so-called Jews are not the real Israelites, are not the real Jews, which they're not. But yet they still hold on to some of the teachings that these rat bastards teach, such as Friday sundown to Saturday sundown being the Sabbath. And there's nowhere in the scriptures where you have Friday or Saturday. It's not in there. People have tried to go into Greek words that doesn't mean Friday or Saturday. All right. So these names are not in there in the scriptures, because these are these names of the week are Greek names, Greek and Latin names for the week. And when you go back to the beginning, Moses was not keeping the Julian calendar / Gregorian calendar. All right. Now, when we keep the Sabbaths, they're based off of the new moon, and depending on when the new moon falls, that is a Sabbath, and that is the beginning of the month. That is the first day of the month, which is also a Sabbath, and that dictates the Sabbaths for the rest of the month. Now, if it falls on a Wednesday, we would say, Wednesday evening to Thursday evening, but we know that those Wednesday and Thursday does not exist in the scriptures, so we're just using that because that's what we have for our calendar for right now. But it's really the first day, second day, third day, so on and so forth, but these guys, they wholeheartedly follow that Friday night to Saturday night Sabbath when there's no scripture to prove that, and they're just basically, like I said, following after the so-called Jews. All right, so this is Genesis 1:14. It says, "And the power said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." So the light, which is the sun and the moon, they were established for times, and that's pretty much what our calendar is. Now, when you're dealing with a calendar is comprised of days, it's comprised of weeks, it's comprised of months, and it's comprised of years. Now, in a week there are 7 days, all right, and that's in the scriptures, and that's also correct according to how the Lord set it up. And you have weeks, so 7 days in a week. You have months, you have 4 weeks in a month, and you have years, which you have 12 months in a year. And everything that the Lord created, he created everything to work in a synergy, to work together, so you can't jump up and separate the weeks from the months and the months from the years. Everything works in the synergy. Days work with weeks, weeks turn into months, and months turn into years, and they all work together. So these lights that you see up in the heavens were created by the Lord to be set up for times, to know when certain feast days are coming in, know when you're gonna have certain harvests, know when the night's coming in, when the day is coming in. It says, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And the powers made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, which is the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, which is the moon. He made the stars also. And the Most High set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And the power saw that it was good. So the main thing is that what these lights were set up, they were set up for signs, for seasons, for days and years. All right, as a way to keep track of time. Now let's go. We're gonna deal with the moon, because the moon is very key in timekeeping, because the moon itself is where you get the word month from, which we're going to read here, Ecclesiasticus 43:6. He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. So the moon was created for declaration of times, and that's exactly what happens. That when the moon comes up, that's when you know that a day is starting. Because when you go back to Genesis 1 and 19, it says, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So you have the evening, the day starts in the evening, from evening to evening. So when you go from one evening to another evening, that's one full day. All right. So that's how you tell time. It says from the moon is a sign of feasts, because you have different feasts that are kept based on the moon. You have real quick, you have Psalms 81:3. It says, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast day. So a new moon is a feast day, but it is also a Sabbath, and we're gonna prove that in this lesson. So the moon was set up to keep track of these high holy days. All right. So going back, it says, from the moon is a sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. Because when you have a full moon, which is in the middle of the month, you have certain high holy days that will fall in the middle of the month, which was you have the Passover that falls in the middle of the month. You have the Feast of Tabernacles that falls in the middle of the month. You have Purim that falls around the middle of the month. So you have certain feast days that fell at that time. It says a light that decreaseth in her perfection. All right. It says the month is called after her name. So the word moon and the word month are synonymous one with the other. All right. It says increasing wonderfully in her changing. Why? Because when the new moon comes up, that's the first day of the month, which begins the cycle for that month. And when the moon is out, it still has light, but it's very, very dim, because the Lord created two lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. So there's no such thing as a dark moon, but it's just not as bright, because it's in the beginning stages. It says, so the month is called after her name, because that's when the month begins. At the first day of the month, it says increasing wonderfully in her changing. Why? Because you have what's called crescent moons, and the crescent moon, the word crescent from the Latin crescere, which means to grow. And as you see the moon growing, it looks like a crescent or a croissant, so you could understand. And then it gets to your half moon, then you get 3/4, then you get the full moon. The full moon comes in around the middle of the month. All right. It says a light that decreases in her perfection. So once it grows from the new moon, it grows to the half moon, to the full moon, and then it starts decreasing. The light starts going back down, because it's getting ready for the next month or the next new moon. All right, and that's how it's kept. It says the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. So the Lord, so that's what happens. So like I jumped up to the verse 7. I should have read 8, but that's what happens. When the moon comes up, it's light, but it's very dim. Then it starts to grow, half moon to the full moon, and it starts to decrease from the full moon down. But the beginning of the month, the light is very dim. All right, and that's the new moon. Now we're gonna go to Samuel to show you, because here it tells you that the month is called after the moon. All right, so the word month is synonymous with moon. Now let's go to 1 Samuel 20 and 17. It says, and Jonathan caused David to swear again because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. Now let's jump to the 24th verse, because we're dealing with the new moon as we dealt with here. And the word new moon from the Hebrew chadash means just that, new moon. All right, which is a new month, which is not new. It's just the moon going through its cycle. All right, 1 Samuel 20 and 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat down to eat meat. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon the seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. Why? Because the new moon is an actual Sabbath, and if you were unclean, there were certain things you couldn't do. And so King Saul thought that King David, must have been unclean. This is the book of Amos, chapter 8, verse 5. It says, saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn? Why? Because you couldn't sell on the Sabbath. So that's why they were asking, when is the new moon going to be gone, so that they could sell their corn, because you couldn't sell on the Sabbath. Which this is another proof that the new moon is an actual Sabbath. Okay, let me just get this one here, just in case we get to it. Just bear with me 1 second. I believe that's around it. Okay, so it says, saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sow corn, and the Sabbath, see, because it is a Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat. So you have the new moon, which is a Sabbath, and then you have Sabbaths that come after the new moon. That's why a majority of times you see new moon, you'll see Sabbath, because the new moon is what dictates the Sabbath for that month. It says that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. So this is letting you know that the new moon is an actual Sabbath, and you couldn't sell on the Sabbath. All right. So going back to 1 Samuel 20, 27, it says, and it came to pass on the morrow, this is the day after the new moon, which was the second day of the month. All right. So the new moon is the first day of the month, which is also a Sabbath, And we just read it here in Amos 8 that you couldn't sell on the new moon. That's why they wanted it to be gone. Now, this is Leviticus 23 and 26. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, also on the 10th day, Shakyah. 23:23. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets and holy convocation, because it is a Sabbath, So the first day of the month is a Sabbath. All right. That's why when you read, what is that? I believe it's Ezekiel 46. Okay. All right, let's start here, the first verse. Ezekiel 46 and 1. Thus saith the Lord of power, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be open. So the only time these gates were open was on the Sabbath, and in the day of the new moon it shall be open. Why? Because the new moon is also a Sabbath. So any Sabbaths, this particular gate would be open, but during the work week it was closed. All right, and I'm going to just jump down to the 3rd verse. Likewise, the people of the land shall worship at the door of the gate before the Lord in the Sabbaths and in the new moons, because the new moons and the Sabbaths, are all conjoined together, and the new moon is a Sabbath. Yeah, so since the new moon is the first day of the month, which is a Sabbath, we read here in Leviticus 23:3, it says, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is a Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. So the first day would be a Sabbath. You count 6 days for work, and then the seventh day, which is the second Sabbath of the month, is the 8th day. So you'll be the first day, the 8th day, the 15th day, the 21st day, and then you got the last Sabbath of the month and the new moon coming in. All right. So now when you jump down here during the time of the Passover, that's where the Passover will come on the 14th day of the first month at evening, which was what? The 15th day, which was another Sabbath. Then when you jump down to the Feast of Tabernacles, the same thing. It fell around the middle of the month. And then when you go to, I believe it's Exodus, the 16th chapter, if I'm not mistaken. It says here, Exodus 16:1, and they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month. So keep in mind, this is the middle of the month, the 15th day of the second. This is the second month after departing out of the land of Egypt. All right, so now they were hungry. They wanted to eat. And I just want to jump. It says, verse 4, Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Now I'm just jump down. You can read the whole chapter. I just want to get the fine points. Just bear with me 1 second. Now keep in mind that this was the 15th day of the second month. When you read the first verse, there was a 15th day of the second month, which is the middle of the month. That was an actual Sabbath. So the Lord said, when you come down here, it says, and it came to pass that on the sixth day they gathered twice as much, because that's what the Lord said. Tell them 6 days they'll gather, and on the 6th day they're gonna gather as much they're gonna gather enough for the 6th day and the 7th day, because the 7th day is a Sabbath, right? So it said, and it came to pass on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And then all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses, and he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. So now if there was the 15th day of the month, and you add 6 days to that, that'll be what? That'll bring it to the 21st day, right? And that evening you would keep the Sabbath. So you have the 15th day plus 6 days is the 21st day, and that the 21st day at evening, that's when you would keep the Sabbath. So tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. So that evening, which was the 21st, that's what began the Sabbath. So the Sabbath would be from the 21st at evening to the 22nd at evening. All right, and then you add another 6 days to that brings it to the 28th. And that evening, you would keep the Sabbath, which would be the 29th day. And around that time, that's when the new moon is coming in. So it all works together. All right. So going back. So this is let you know here, 1 Samuel 20:27. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month. So the new moon is the first day of the month. And then that dictates the count for that month. For the calendar for that month. All right. And so I went here to show you that the next day after the new moon was the second day of the month. So that's how you count it. So that's why the Lord said that the moon was set up and the month was called after her name. And this is what dictates, the times or the calendar, for lack of better words, for that month. Because when you go back, when Israel was in the wilderness, they were not keeping Sabbath, Friday night to Saturday night, because that didn't exist back then. They were keeping it according to the moons, and that's why you had the tribe of Issachar that would actually were experts in time, telling time and keeping time, because you had to have a watch. There was a watch that was out there, and they would know, what hour, everything was down to the specifics, to the hours, the seconds, minutes, and all of that, and every time the moon would come up, they would know, okay, look, the new moon is coming up. You could tell because of the way the light is decreasing, and then once the new moon comes in, which is the beginning of the month, then the light of the moon will start to increase again, so they weren't keeping no Friday night to Saturday night Sabbath, during when we were in the wilderness. And also when you go to the different captivities, where there was the Assyrian captivity, Babylonian captivity, Greek captivity, Medo-Persian captivity, there was no such thing. Well, Medo-Persian captivity, there was no such thing as Friday night or Saturday night. That didn't come about to the Greeks and the Romans time, So what day were they keeping? They were keeping it according to the new moon. So you can't jump up and say Friday night to Saturday night is a new moon, because you can't go into the scriptures and pull out Friday night or Saturday night out of the scriptures, because it's not in there. All right. So with that, it's been a short lesson on the new moon and the Sabbath, So with that, hope your brother's been edified. Till the next time I say Shalom.